How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be answering your questions, and I think this video series is getting to be really successful. I think it's really helpful for you guys to be able to ask me questions and get answers directly. I get a lot of questions in the comments of my videos about different tech cards, different ways of playing Branded and Despia, and I think it's a good platform to answer those right now. And before we begin, make sure to check out Sleeve Chief's new One Piece mini collection. If you are a fan of One Piece and looking for great looking accessories, check out the affiliate link in the description of this video and make sure to pick up one of these collections yourself. And let's kick this off with the first question by Hussein Musa, who asks, what do you think of Keeper of Dragon Magic? I've been very vocal and very critical of the Predaplant Keeper builds. I know that Ref's Cards is a really good player who managed to do well with this deck. He really makes the deck work, and I think there's a lot of respect to be had over there. But I think Keeper of Dragon Magic has always had two problems, in my opinion, when I was testing the build, and trust me, I have. On one hand, if you commit your normal summon to Keeper of Dragon Magic, that blocks you from the two other really good normal summons, maybe even three, where Aluber and Quem really provide good value when normal summoning, and you definitely want to be special summoning one with opening and then normal summoning the other, and you want both of them. You also have Albaz as a really good normal summon as a board breaker as well that is now a little bit more viable. So I think that committing to a normal summon that searches a starter of a combo piece, it doesn't even search for Branded Fusion, it usually in those builds searches for instant fusion, getting stopped there is really problematic. The other more important reason why I don't like Keeper of Dragon Magic is because of the format. When you have a Droll and Lockbird format where a lot of people main that card, if you start off with Keeper and rely on adding instant, then deployment, then Branded Fusion to your hand, along with a lot of other combo pieces that you need, if you get drolled on Keeper, it's a real problem. If you get drolled on Aluber adding Branded Fusion, your turn goes uninterrupted from there. So these are two reasons why I don't like Keeper. Even though I really like what the build can do, it might just not be the right format. How do you deal with Super Heavy Samurai, asks Ricardo. I think this question comes up a lot, especially in my Nationals video where I said that it's not necessarily always a problem breaking a Super Heavy Samurai board. It really depends on what they end on. So for my Nationals build, I knew that I was probably going to see some Super Heavy Samurais. I saw one of them and it was in the finals, and my Drolls that were main deck didn't do a lot versus other decks, but they did just enough against Super Heavy Samurai because they really lose to it. Another thing with Super Heavy Samurai is really depending on what the board they end up looks like. A lot of times, if you're talking about a board where they have Baguska, it might be problematic to out because they will Baguska you, pass turn, you can't really play, you pass back to them, and they just OTK you because they switch it to attack position. This is why you should play things like Kaijus, maybe even Super Poly, to try to put a dent in that strategy. Another thing that they do is, of course, Spell Counselor, Baron, and Saryuja. So what they do is that they use Saryuja to summon, they use Saryuja's mandatory effect to gain 300 attack for the Spell Counselor, then they pop it with a Baron, and you can't use it because Saryuja also has an arrow pointing to your field. So what essentially happens if they don't point it, you can use Albaz or Aluber that have the same attack stats as Spellcaster, gain attack, crash into the Spellcaster, and then you get to play. There's a lot of ways to break that board, but again, Branded is not the only one that has trouble breaking that board because it's sometimes an impossible board to break. So again, use side deck cards, and of course use main deck cards like Droll and like Kaijus to try to maybe have a chance to play against it. Good Looking TV asks, hey Galzo, why not use Chaos Angel? Well, I made a build of the Branded Synchro strategy a few days ago or like a week ago, and I ran over all the reasons why you should play Synchros and why you shouldn't. I think the main reason why you shouldn't play Chaos Angel in a normal Branded deck is the fact that you don't have enough level 6s to actually synchro summon. If you play the normal Branded build, then you play one level 6, which is Serenir. So if you're siding, maybe you have 4 level 6s, but the only way where you actually summon Chaos Angel is when you have a Bestial and Cartesia or Quem on the field. And if you only play one Bestial, it's just not that good. Dan Lay asks what happens with the deck should they ban the ability to Expulsion or Gimmick Puppet your opponent. So I made a build about that as well. There are a lot of different cards that you can replace, and I think that Expulsion and Gimmick Puppet have a very high chance of getting banned. I think Expulsion specifically is a very, very strong card. Regardless of Gimmick Puppet, just summoning 2 monsters to the field from Banish so you can't really interact with it is really difficult. I think that Gimmick Puppet is a very strong card that eventually will need to get banned, probably, or Expulsion, one of the other, but maybe even both of them. You have a lot of other ways to play with that. So remember when Sprite started using, and still are using, Mannequin Cat to bring out certain floodgates or interruptions from the deck, like, for example, Invader of Darkness, Archlord Christia, Testudo Air Newman. Basically, that's how you should play with branded post-ban lists. So you get good cards that are good against a lot of decks. For example, Jinzo against trap decks. Very consistently send it to the graveyard with Grand Guignol. Do the whole same thing. Just use Albion the Sanctified Dragon to summon it back. Regardless of that, I think that branded is a very strong deck without locking your opponent. So it really depends on a ban list, but once Kashtira gets hit, I think branded has a lot better chance of winning post that ban list. Raphael asks, what are your thoughts on Fusion Duplication? I think it's a really, really cool tech. Unfortunately, it's not consistent enough to search. So if you don't know, Fusion Duplication can banish a fusion card from your graveyard to copy its effect. So essentially, you get ashed on branded fusion, you set duplication, then on your opponent's turn, you can just branded fusion as a quick effect. Really cool, I think super inconsistent. And if, for example, Alba Lenidus would have set fusion traps from your decks, that would have been really, really cool. But again, it's a cool tech, I think, but maybe Crossout or Nadir Servant just offer more purpose and more utility besides that. Spunky asks, what about Blazing Brightest Branded King? So the trap card that we all really were hyped for, I think, before released, is not really seeing play right now. So the effect, if you don't know, is that you choose a monster, a fusion monster that mentions Fallen Valbaz, and you negate all other cards on the field except for that monster. So that can protect you from things like Evenly Matched or even Dark Ruler No More, but it also negates everything else on your board. So for example, if you have another Mirror Jade, if you have another fusion that you want to interact with, usually the branded end board right now is more than one monster. It's not just the Mirror Jade, right? And you don't really want to negate your own cards. I think that there's not a lot of threats in the format currently that would actually benefit. Like, what do you even need to negate? Branded plays around evenly really well. Dark Ruler No More doesn't do enough, and you also don't die that turn. So I think that's why people are probably not playing it right now. And Safe says, what cards do I side out in every match? Well, I think this is a very complicated question. I did do a few videos on that, so you can look up in my channel like siding guides and stuff like that. I think that the basic philosophy of siding is that, first of all, you want your cards in your side deck to be as generic as possible, to not only counter a specific deck. This is why I don't like Perform Appel 5 Rainbow Magician in the side deck, because it basically only counters one deck, even though it's consistently searchable and you can get it easily out with Branded Fusion, Sanctified Dragon, stuff like that. You can just get it to the end phase. It's not good enough. I would suggest your side deck to be as generic as possible, and then when you are trying to side, think about what are the going second cards or going first cards that you don't need in this current situation, and just try to replace them with good cards. Even against Kashtira, for example, I would sometimes side out things like Albion, the Shrouded Dragon, and Retribution, because I know that if the possibility occurs that I get shifted or I am put under a Rise Heart, these cards just don't do anything because I can't get them to the graveyard. So possibly, in that example, you put in cards that just don't lose to that. So that's going to be it for today's episode. Leave more comments down below. Ask me more questions for the next video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, because we're on the way to 10K. We're almost there. Come on. And yeah, if you want to support the channel even further, click the join button to learn how to become a member and get some awesome perks. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.